So start from the beginning. What was this property before it looked like this?
This property, so a portion of it was hayfield that had been untouched for years. And then we had about 20 acres back that was just pine trees. You can see pine trees all around, and they, have just been growing for years. And so we got our permit and decided okay, we're allowed to grow 40 acres. Let's do it. We're all in. And so we cleared 40 acres the end of last year, and then we started our greenhouse and kind of went above and beyond. But we did a lot of research. Everything that we've done we've researched everything so much, and we've consulted, and then we've run our own numbers, and we've kind of come up with our own game plan, albeit a little untraditional. I mean, most people I don't think would want to go through doing the plastic or putting a concrete skirting around the greenhouse. But we had our reasonings for everything. When it rains here, we don't want the greenhouse to be flooded with all that water and to raise the humidity. So let's see, what did we do after that?
And the greenhouse, talk about the greenhouse. So what do you guys have in there? It's not just like a building. Because when you think greenhouse, I just think of like a building that allows light in it, but it sounds like you guys have a lot of technology in there as well.
We have a lot of technology. So in our greenhouse, we have misters. You have to make sure that the humidity stays up to, we like to try to keep it about 40 to 60%. And in the greenhouse, you kind of struggle when you turn those fans on, your humidity just drops. And so you've got to add humidity to it. The best way to do that was through misters. And then as it kind of got hotter and hotter, we had to figure out how can we cool it down, because 119 degrees in a greenhouse is really not ideal for those plants. And so we were able to put in a cool cell so that air flows through it. It's something that they use mainly in chicken houses, and so sounds like a good idea. Let's try that. Let's see where it goes. What can we do with it? Yeah. And so it actually did a great job of bringing down the temperature and increasing the humidity. I've got temperature sensors, I've got humidity sensors. So anytime I've got my humidity either increases or decreases to a point that I don't want it to be within, it sends me a notice on my phone, and I'm able to call whoever's on site. We've got somebody on site 24/7, and call somebody who's on site and send them to do whatever needs to be done in order to get things back on track.
Wow, that's even cool. Just the automation of you get a notification to your iPhone.
Yep, and I've got fans that I can turn on above and below. You want to keep the air circulation going. In a greenhouse setting, you have really no airflow unless you add these fans. And then when you put them in the ground, you have to, you understand they're small plants, and when the wind hits them, they're gonna break or tear out the ground. So you kind of have to stress them while they're in the greenhouse. And so we add extra fans, and I can turn those on and turn those off as my humidity goes up or temperature goes up, and to be able to just do whatever it needs to be done in there. We've got cameras in there, so I can ensure at any point in time if my temperature spikes, I have an issue with one of the major exhaust fans, I can look in there and see what's going on to assess the situation before I send somebody out there and tell them exactly what we need to take care of it.
I mean, like a nursery when you have kids. Even more extreme it seems than that. So, and as I asked you before, your family or you and your husband, farming is not a novel concept to you guys. Talk about that a little bit, what you've done before this plant.
So we've done soybeans and corn and sunflowers, and we've had little gardens and larger gardens, and so we've growing a plant, when you grow these, you're kind of growing them like any other plant. I mean, yeah, they've got some special needs that need to be attended to. You've got, photo periods that you have to worry about. You have to make sure that they're within a certain temperature and humidity so that you don't stress them to a point where they start flowering too soon, or that you cause an early stem rot, root rot in the greenhouse, or that that tap root is just kind of starts winding on itself. So there are certain aspects that when you're planting your normal crops that you don't get here. With corn, you've got machines that can do anything that you need for you, but here we don't have that type of machinery yet. It's we haven't had this plant in a long time, so we don't have anything to be able to plant it for us. When we planted them in the greenhouse, they were in there for a few weeks. We babied them, we watched over them, we made sure that we watered them, and we've got many lights hanging from there, and so we have to make sure that those lights turn on at a certain time and turn off at a certain time, so that they have that 16-ish hours of light during the day. And when they get out here, we kind of hope that hope that we're putting them in the ground at the right time. And I think we've done quite well so far.
Yeah. Well, and you talked about this over there as well, that there's not a whole lot to go off of with this plant, because the last time it was grown was 80 plus years ago. And so even just like literature on it, or even a human to talk to, someone who has experience, that doesn't exist. So what does that mean for you guys? Has this been a lot of trial by error?
We've had a lot of education. We go by, we've had consultants, we've, consulted with so many others, you've got people in Oregon, and, you've got people that are already growing it. So you kind of hope that we can go by those, by their statistics and such, but we also have a different climate. Yeah. So while it's cooler and drier there, it's, more humid here, and they may need more water than we do here before we start causing, a root rot issue, or, so we're it is a lot of trial by error, but it's a lot of research too.
Yeah.
How do we make our next move? Looking at everything that, we've done, and, treating it like any other plant and adding in those extra needs. I think we've done all right so far.
It looks like it. I mean, you said 40 acres that you've planted on. How many
acres.
plants?
We, I think, put in about 70,000 seeds.
Oh.
And
that's a lot.
A lot of it is. You can do automated things too, as far as like seeding is concerned, and so that's something that we had looked into. In the end, we chose not to. We chose not to do an automation. What better way to learn about the plant from the initial stages, the seeds, than to actually put your hands on every single one of them, drop them in the hole. It was, yes, a whole lot of work. A whole lot of work. Everything out here has been quite labor intensive, though. Like I said, it's been years, and so we don't have any machinery that can do it for us. Right. We've got our 2-person, planter,
right,
but there's no
massive equipment.
And you can get larger ones, I'm sure, and you can do it on a larger scale, but we want to try and do it to where we can look at every single one of them and pay extra special attention to every single one of them. When it came to planting these, the 2-row planter, and you've got 2 people sitting there, and you've got the plastic. We had to put the plastic down ourselves, and the drip tape and all of the irrigation, and so the planter has a wheel on it, and it pokes a hole, and it dumps a little bit of water in that hole, and then you've got 2 people sitting there just putting plants in the holes. Wow. And then you've got a group coming behind them to tuck in each and every one of these plants, to push some dirt around it and make sure it's stable and upright, and that it looks good. So everybody has seen, we've touched every single one of these plants many times. Why are you growing hemp? Hemp is something that we have been looking at for a while. We've seen research studies come out for the CBD. I mean, it's something that we haven't had, and I'll say it time and time again, it's something that we haven't had. And now that we have additional research, we have the ability to grow it and provide what can be used as a medication. And we've got research studies for anti-seizure medications. We've got medications for people who are suffering from nausea, and based on the CBD. But there's so much more out there that they are trying to research, and that can be available if they have the product to test. Right. And so you were talking a little bit about their lab. There's still some checks you guys have to cross off to make sure that the plant, I don't know how all that works. So talk about that aspect of it. So in order to be considered hemp and not marijuana, there's a difference. The difference is the level of THC. Okay. So the THC in a hemp plant is 0.3% or lower. It cannot go above 0.3%. We've got regulations we have to abide by. And that amount of THC it's negligible. It's not going to do anything for you. You're not going to get the excitement that you would expect from marijuana. Right. So hemp has a much higher CBD content. Okay. And being able to test it is something that we have to provide that documentation to show that we're compliant, we're doing exactly what needs to be done. But the issue is finding a lab that provides that testing, and there are no regulations for it. There's no like standard for it right now. So when you've got a flower and the bud, whatever term that you choose to use, you know, you've got the top, which is, it has a higher content. So your CBD and your THC are going to be, you know, higher here. Whereas the bottom of the bud, you're going to have a lower content. In the middle, you're going to kind of have, you know, a mid-range.
Right.
And so when it comes time to testing, how do you test that? What do you submit? What do you provide as documentation, as proof that you're growing hemp and not something that is illegal? And so you have to rely on your lab. You have to have a lab that knows what they're doing. And they, Clearwater and Clearwater Biotech and Benji and Dr. Snyder, they've done an amazing job. They'll take my sample and they take it and they just create a homogeneous mixture. So they'll take it, they'll dry it for me, the entirety of it. They grind it, they'll mix it up. So you've got a good representative of exactly what that plant holds. And they process so many things in their lab. They have blood samples, you know, things that come from hospitals and doctors. And when I went to visit their lab, their margin of error, they find no acceptability. You know, it's not acceptable to make an error because they're treating my hemp sample just as they would treat somebody's blood sample who's in the hospital and very ill. And to me, that's comforting. That to know that I'm not getting some sort of a skewed result just to keep my business. They're treating my sample and their chain of command is top notch.
Why is that important in terms of like hemp that you ingest or CBD that you ingest? Why is it important to know what the concentration is, etc., as opposed to just like hemp that you would put in like a blend of like a shirt or something?
So anybody that's using CBD, you kind of have to have the thought process that they are either immunocompromised or, you know, they're struggling for one reason or another, and we want to make sure that whatever we're putting out there is going to help them and not hurt them. I want to make sure that if they have decided that their dosage, or between them and their physician have decided that this is the dosage that they need to be taking, that Clearwater Biotech is going to make sure that I have that amount.
No, that's very important. Processing it. You guys don't process it, do you?
We do not. We are farmers, not processors.
Where does that component come in? So like, you grow it, then when you harvest it, what happens next?
So then it has to be dried.
Okay.
And drying, there's so many, like I said, it's uncharted territory right now. And so can you bake it in essence? Do you hang it to dry it? Do you just chop it all up and send it off? We've kind of decided we're going to go old school and just kind of sit back and watch and see how others are doing it. So we're planning on hanging it as of this point. We just lots of airflow and monitoring the temperature and humidity just as we do in the greenhouse, and doing the best that we can. Failure is not. It's not in our game. We don't plan on failure being in our game. So we're just doing everything the best way that we can, probably the safest way that we feel that we can do.
So you dry it and then you send it out to be processed. Is that processed here in South Carolina or somewhere else? Do you choose the processor?
We get to choose who we want to process, and just like any of the other decisions that we've made, we do a lot of research, and we're still in the phase of finding out how we're going to process it. So
the reason I asked who and is it here in South Carolina is because when I was talking to the South Carolina Department of Agriculture, she was telling me that not many, we're still having to outsource for the processing because like the farming has kind of gone like this, right? You have like a lot more people farming it now, but not a whole lot of processors in the state. And so that's kind of a second part of it that she told me she was working on, is like, we're happy we've got all these people farming it, but now we have to have people to process it.
Yes,
and that's
so
a challenge.
That's kind of where I'm, leaning on Benji Baker over at Clearwater Biotech, is because not only does he test hemp from the field, but he also tests your CBDs. So anything that you can go and buy, he can test.
Yeah.
So to ensure that your content is right. So he's got, processors that are coming to him and farmers that are coming to him.
Yeah.
And so it kind of helps us all come together and work together.
Right.
So Benji's kind of gonna be my guy for
What's the community like? The hemp farming community. I mean, like, you guys on a Facebook group? Are you guys friends? Like, do you rely on each other or no? It's fine if the answer is no. I'm just curious because you guys are trailblazers.
Well, there's so very few right now, and I think we've got just a little over 113 farmers this year, and so I think everybody right now is kind of focusing on how to make it happen. And I think we're so focused that I don't know that that's really become a thing yet. I'm sure it will very soon. I mean, we're in year 2, so
cool.
We're gonna see.
So describe to me, like, what's different about this plant than a marijuana plant?
You cannot tell a difference visually.
Okay.
It looks the same, it smells the same. I mean, it's like looking at your coffee and your decaf. Can you tell the difference? You can't.
Right.
It's not until you test it that you can tell the difference. So again, that's where your analysis becomes very important to ensure that the product that you're getting is the product that you want.
My last question for you is, as I've been doing this, I've been realizing that the people who are growing hemp are not like what you expect. I mean, retired politician Chip Limehouse growing hemp. I mean, you and your husband, he's a radiation oncologist, and even like, I didn't expect you to be as young as you are, Like, we rolled up, I was like, wow, she's really young, and you have 4 children, you're a mother. You're not who I think that most people expect to grow hemp. When you tell your friends and neighbors that you guys are doing this, what's their response, and then how do you respond back to them?
Generally, it's oh, this is amazing. I can't, this is crazy that you're doing it. I started my mother on this. My, sister started taking it, and it's really helped her a lot.
Yeah.
So we've actually gotten a good bit of feedback, positive feedback, which is, it's very comforting that the stigma is kind of starting to leave.
Right. And when you do meet those people who are like, oh, like, hippie, you guys growing hemp, like, what's your response back? Because you want to be polite, but, what's your response back?
This is hemp, not pot, not marijuana.
Right.
We're not getting high off of anything. I can touch this plant, and I'm not concerned that I'm going to, ingest any THC that could do anything for me.
As more stories come out in the news and as more people talk about it, do you feel that perception is like swinging to be more what the plant actually is and away from like what it's not?
I do. I think the more that people are able to talk about it and that we're able to just pull test results and show, scientific data, research studies that prove that, this is not just what we used to think it was, that there's more to it than we originally thought.
Yeah.
And that's what happens as, our technology changes, as we get newer, implements or instruments that can show us what's going on with the plant itself.
Perfect. That's all I needed.